And welcome back, everyone, to the Notes and Quotes podcast. It's such a joy to have you here. If you are here for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have you join this community. It's a great joy to have you here. Now, today we are talking about something very important. I feel like the world as a whole has been changing so rapidly, much more than I have ever experienced in my lifetime. I think I'm 22 for context. And what comes shockingly as a surprise to a lot of people, marginalized groups are still struggling in so many ways, especially Black communities, just in every aspect of life. So, if you've ever felt like you can't be your authentic self in any sort of setting, if you feel like you're very aware of your Blackness, of your color, of everything about you, if you feel like you have to tamp down your personality in certain situations, or you have to push up your personality in certain situations, or just change and not be your authentic self, then this is definitely the conversation that you need to hear today. And I'm so excited that I'm able to sit down with somebody who is so experienced in this. And I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to who this is. So, Grace Mosuro is a Nigerian born, UK raised mother, breast cancer thriver, and a leading authority in equality, diversity, and inclusion. With expertise in intersectionality and cultural competency, she leverages her lived experiences and professional background in business management, leadership development, and EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion, to drive meaningful change across diverse sectors. Grace's personal journey, including overcoming breast cancer, has amplified her commitment to fostering workplaces that not only celebrate diversity, but also acknowledge and address the complexities of intersectional identities. As the founder and CEO of Acquaintance Consulting and the acting CEO and chair of trustees at Every Future Foundation, an anti racism education charity, Grace uses her expertise to help organizations build inclusive cultures where individuals from all backgrounds can bring their authentic selves to work. Her authentic leadership, dedication to cultural competency, and passion for for intersectional inclusivity makes her a trailblazer in shaping organizational cultures that prioritize equity and belonging. So, I don't know about you, but I feel like a mix of emotions when I read that. It's like a bit of intimidation, but also like excitement and fascination and just joy. So, Grace, thank you so much for sitting down with me today to share all of this with me. And how are you? How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I am good. I'm really good. I'm struggling emotionally because my daughter turned 13 today, so it's
Oh,
emotional.
wow.
But I am
Teenager.
really, really good. I know. She's been a teenager since she was 10 in her mind anyway. But yeah, it's an emotional day, but I feel blessed. I'm grateful. She's doing really well. So I'm happy. I'm
Oh,
happy.
yay.
Thank
That's
you
so
so much for
good.
having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you. So, today, with all of our episodes, we have the guest share the quote that forms the foundation of the conversation. So, you sent me a really lovely quote. Do you want to share with us what that is?
Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes is my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. And that's a
I
quote by
love
Maya
that.
Angelou. I'm obsessed with Maya, as most people are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that quote because I think that particularly Black women, we kind of grow up with this feeling or this compulsion that life means we must experience struggle. And I feel like I'm at the point in my life now where for me actually no, I want to do more than just survive. I want to thrive. I want to, especially after my breast cancer journey, it's like tomorrow is not promised, so let's enjoy each and every single day. And we don't have to suffer. We don't. Life can be beautiful, and it should be. And I think it's important that we live with intention. Like, how are we going to make our lives beautiful and how are we going to thrive? And I also feel like, and me and my friends say this a lot, and I'm sure you've heard this, like, particularly Black girls, we talk a lot about having a soft life. Like,
Mm,
and I feel like that's
yeah.
almost the current day version of Maya's quote is actually, let's just have a soft life. I'm really big on that. So, yeah, that's why I love it.
Oh, I love that. It also kind of reminds me of just taking a step back to relax in your life. When you talk about soft life and thriving in Maya's quote, it's kind of not pushing yourself to be everything and all of these incredible things, just to be present and be yourself and know that that's enough.
Mm,
And I think that
yeah,
that is
absolutely.
really, that's a really amazing quote and really amazing thing, especially for Black women as well, because there's so much pressure on us to be
Mm,
everything and to just, beat all the odds and all that stuff. Have you ever found
mm.
that in like just your experiences in life?
No, absolutely. So I'm Nigerian and I'm the firstborn daughter.
Mm,
And I say that because in my culture, the firstborn daughter is seen as a blessing because you've got someone that's going to look after you for the rest of your life. Like that's how the
hmm.
parents see it. But
Yeah.
also you've also got a second mum for the children that come after her.
Yeah.
And my upbringing was very much that. It was about, setting the example, looking after my younger brother and sister, not bringing shame to the family name and carrying yourself a certain way, etc., and obviously working hard. And my parents, I'm an immigrant as well. So I wasn't born in this country. I moved here when I was 5, with my parents. And for the majority of our youth, it was very much like, keep your head down, don't get into any trouble. This isn't our country. We could get sent back, this, that, and the other. So almost living life with this sense of fear and pressure, and just not being able to just be.
Hmm.
I talk to some of my friends now about just who would we be if we were just born and allowed to be, rather
Yeah.
than being born as the firstborn, as the daughter, as black, as a woman. All of these labels that almost put us into this box, and with that box comes expected behaviors. So yeah, I think it's just, there's pressure on us, period, as women, but then as black women, then as an African woman, as a firstborn, all sorts. So I've definitely kind of grown up having this requirement put on me to live my life a certain way and to be a certain person, and having that pressure and that burden. And it's something that I'm so conscious of, that my daughter lives a really, really carefree life, almost too carefree, because I'm really keen to not put on her the things that were put on me that were
Yeah.
detrimental. I think there's something really, really beautiful about being able to live, a somewhat carefree life, and I don't
Yeah.
think that enough black women have the opportunity to live that. One of the things that I'm very conscious of is I never leave my house without kind of almost having to put on an invisible coat,
Mm,
an invisible coat of armor, because you have to be switched on in every space that you're in.
yeah.
Whether it's, are you around someone that doesn't like people that look like you? Are you in the supermarket and, you know, making sure that your bag isn't open, or that you're not touching things with your bag open, etc., because security is already watching you, irrespective of the fact that you're not there to steal.
Yeah.
um, Being mindful of like self-regulating yourself if you're having a difficult conversation. I can't be the one to raise my voice. I have to watch how I say certain things. And
Yeah.
even when I am openly disrespected or, attacked, being still having to be on guard and mindful about how I show up and how I present, because I can't be the angry black woman. It's a lot. I think it's really, really hard. So I definitely identify with kind of the subject matter of today's episode. And it does make me sad though, because I've got younger cousins that are your age, and I always, they were my babies. I remember them being born, and I've always wanted to protect them. But the fact that they're coming into a space and still experiencing some of the things that I grew up experiencing is really hard
Hmm.
to see.
Yeah. No, because when you were saying all of that, I was relating to so much of it. And it's like it's a good feeling to be able to feel seen in that, but it's also sad at the same time to know that this is still going on, like this invisible
Yeah.
cloak, especially with the layer of being an immigrant, because I'm an immigrant as well. I'm from Barbados. I came here with my parents. Well, my parents came maybe like a year ago. I came 8 months ago. And it's that invisible cloak that you have all the time. And it's such a big
Mm,
contrast as well, because in Barbados, it's predominantly black. So I didn't have any
yeah.
invisible cloak. I was moving around carefree.
Yeah.
but you're still taught in those countries, it's not the same overseas. It's not the same,
Yeah.
like, with if you're the minority, you're the minority and you have to represent for all of your people. So if I'm in
Mm,
a predominantly white area, I represent the narrative for black women and black people as a whole. So you're right,
mm,
like I have that invisible cloak, that thing in the back of my mind that I can't raise my voice in this situation. I can't get upset if someone's disrespecting me. I can't,
mm,
walk into a store with my hands in my pockets or something like that, looking like I'm, suspicious or
mm.
something. And it's just this idea of expectation all the time, but then also making sure
Yeah.
that you are constantly representing. And it's a lot of pressure, but it feels like it's a pressure that I've had for so long, that I've known about for so long, that it's almost like a subconscious pressure. You don't really realize it anymore. So you'd
Mm.
mentioned before that you try really hard to not put certain expectations and everything on your daughter. Do you think that as a generation she's what, like 13, that she has that invisible cloak still?
So it's interesting because so I didn't tell my daughter about the fact that I didn't talk to my daughter about race until George Floyd was murdered because
Mm,
I didn't need to. My daughter at the time was, quick maths, she would have been 8 or 9. 10,
yeah,
11,
I
12,
think.
13.
Oh
Yeah.
God, I can't even remember how long ago that was.
I know it was 2020 and
Yeah.
she was a baby. Well, she didn't think she was a baby, but to me she was a baby. And she was very innocent. She was in primary school. In her primary school there weren't that many black people. Yeah, we'd never talked to her about race, and I had to talk to her about race after that because everything was so heightened. We were on
Yeah.
lockdown, so she was bound to see things on the news, etc. And it was a really really painful time to tell her that, and she looked so confused. And I think the thing is, you know black people have to unfortunately have this conversation with their kids. You never want to have this conversation with your kids, but you will have
Yeah.
to if you are going to be an effective parent, because one of the things that we want to do as parents is protect our children, and in order to
Mhm.
protect them we need to give them the tools they need to go out into this world and be successful. And one
Yeah.
of those tools is understanding that your skin color means that in some places you won't be received as you should be.
Mm.
And so telling her that, she didn't get it necessarily, but then she went to France on a school trip last year, and I had to again have that conversation with her because it was right in the period where the far right party were gaining power. They were being really vocal, and I was scared to let her go. It's only because her dad is the braver one of us that he was like,
Mhm.
no, she'll be fine. She's with the school. Otherwise, my daughter would not have gone. But she went on that trip, but before she went on that trip, I had to tell her, this isn't the UK. You don't understand the language. Things could happen in France that you might be uncomfortable with, etc. I need you to stay with your teachers, this, that, and the other, and protecting her in that way. But
Mhm.
I've got to be honest, my daughter's a child. She's still very innocent. So it goes in one ear and out the other, especially because she's with friends who,
Yeah.
a lot of her friends aren't black, so they carry themselves in a certain way, and she mirrors that behavior, not knowing that actually that could lead to her being treated very, very differently.
Yeah.
So my daughter doesn't wear a cloak at all. Like, she's still very innocent, she's still very free, and I love that for her. I would love for her to enter the world of work cloakless. That would
Mhm.
be a beautiful thing, and that's why I do the work that I do, because I'm hoping to create a world and workplaces where my daughter doesn't need to wear a cloak. She can be who she is without any limitations.
I think
I
that's
do.
beautiful. I
Yeah.
honestly do. I think that it's such a privilege as well, that to be mentally cloakless and to just live
Mm,
freely. And it brings me back to some things that I know that you talk about in your work about like unlearning certain harmful beliefs that we grow up with and that are
mm,
put on us. And particularly I think all people of color, but black women as well, hold really dear to their hearts those harmful beliefs that you kind of have to actively unlearn as you get older and as you go through life. What would you say are some of the most common limiting beliefs that you've come across in your work?
I think one of the limiting beliefs is that you have to work twice as hard to get half as much. And it's not to say that it's not true. I do think we do have to, unfortunately, work harder than some of our colleagues purely because of the color of our skin in order for us to
Yeah.
get noticed. However, one of the things, the reason I think it's a limiting belief is because what we're not taught is that working hard, so your performance in your job only equates to about 20 to 30% of what actually impacts you progressing in your career and in an organization. A good 60% of what will impact you progressing is actually your visibility. Who knows you? Who knows about
Really?
your work? Who is talking about you in rooms that you're not in? Because there will be a lot of rooms that you're not in that could
Mhm.
impact your career. So, one of the things that I think that we should be teaching Black people and young Black women now is talk about your successes. Like, talk about what makes you special. Talk about the things that you're doing, the things you've done. Talk about your qualifications. Just talk about your special sauce, because if you're not talking about you, people aren't going to know. Um,
Mm.
and I think there's also a piece around like looking at the people that are progressing around you. What are they doing? And mirroring those behaviors. Like, one of my friends always tells me that I need to like behave a little bit more like a young white man, because the way they carry themselves, the
So much
confidence they have, the
confidence.
way they talk about them, they talk themselves up,
Yeah.
and we need to take on some of that energy. So I'd say that that's kind of a reframe that we need to do on some of the messaging that we received growing up. I
Yeah.
think the other thing that we need to unlearn, particularly as Black women, is unlearning that you have to be strong all the time. I think it's a really, really negative lesson that we get taught because it's exhausting, firstly, and it impacts our mental health really negatively. I was the strong Black woman until I got breast cancer and was on my knees from chemotherapy. And it was only
Mm.
during that time in my life where I was able to allow other people to help me and be comfortable and okay with needing that help. And since that experience, I now love the idea of being vulnerable. I love the fact that I want people to help me. I will ask for help with no issue. I will be in the gym and I will do, some exercises with some weights, and I'll be tired and I will ask a strong man in the gym to help me put the weight back. I have no issue. Whereas back in the day, being the strong Black woman, I'd be like, no, I can do this. I'll put this back myself. Why? I don't need to.
Yeah.
We need to let go of that. And I'm really comfortable now with seeing vulnerability as a strength. There's something really, really beautiful about just being able to be honest and say, I need help or I want help, and that's absolutely fine. I find it really attractive to see a man that is able to express his vulnerability and
Oh
to
my gosh,
express
yeah.
when he needs help and to express his emotions. And I think, so that's something as a Black community that we need to unlearn, is this view that, we have to be strong all the time and we can't let people see us be emotional. And then there was one more thing that I think we need to unlearn. I can't remember what it is. It'll come back to me, I'm
No,
sure.
that's okay. I mean, there's so many things that I wanna jump on with what you said just now. Oh my gosh. Like, okay, so for the first one, with the workplace and just sharing your accolades and your achievements and everything, because you probably are not in the rooms that might other people might have the privilege of being in. For me, I hear that and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're so right," but then I struggle with it at the same time because I have this mentality of like, I don't wanna seem like I'm bragging, like, I don't wanna seem
Mm,
like I'm trying to be too much or,
mm,
the same mentality is like, I can't seem like I'm trying to be arrogant or the overbearing person, you know? So how
mm.
do I balance humility and, I guess, for lack of a better term, being liked with,
Yeah.
you know, pushing myself forward?
It's difficult, but what I would say is that would I'd observe the people that you work with, the ones that do that really, really well.
Mhm.
Okay. I'd observe the white men in your team. See how they are talking about their work, see how they
Yeah.
are being recognized, see what they're doing, and see how you can do that in your own way. I'd be in, in team meetings. Team meetings are a great opportunity for you to talk about what you've done, because team meetings, traditionally, you'll be asked, how are you getting on with your work? And you can
Yeah.
talk about, I've just finished this project, really happy with it. The client has, given some really positive feedback, or I really enjoyed working with this person. This is what I've learned, and this is the additional responsibility I've taken on. In those spaces, talking about the work that you've done in a month is a really easy, comfortable way to do it, because
Mhm.
you're expected to talk about it anyway. In your one-to-ones, going into your one-to-ones prepared with your successes for the month. What were your objectives that you were expected to achieve? How have you done that, and how have you exceeded that? And what
Yeah.
additional work are you taking on, etc.? So using those opportunities to really talk yourself up. The other thing that I'd recommend people do is get themselves a mentor. The great thing about a mentor, ideally a mentor that's not in your team as well, so from a different part of the organization. So find someone who you respect, who you think, is just a trailblazer, is doing great things, people like them, they're successful. And ask them to be your mentor. It's highly unlikely, unless you are a terrible employee, which I'm hoping no one is, it's highly unlikely that someone will say no to being your mentor, because people love
Yeah.
to help. They love to be asked to do things like that. And ask your mentor for advice. Tell them what your aspirations are, what you're hoping to get from the mentoring relationship, whether it's to learn to do certain aspects of your role better, or whether it's to get advice on how you progress in the organization, or how you move into a particular role. The
Mhm.
great thing about having a mentor is, especially someone that's not in your team, is they have greater exposure to different parts of the organization. They'll know different people, they'll be in different rooms, so they'll be able to talk about you in a way that maybe your line manager won't be able to, because they might not have that exposure, or they might just be too busy.
Yeah.
But your mentor almost takes on that responsibility of being your advocate in different parts of the organization. They can give you advice around skills that you need to learn, they can encourage you when things get tricky. So yeah, I definitely recommend that as well.
Wow. I actually am so gonna take that advice, because that was, yeah, because I feel like the same thing that I said before, where yeah, I want to push myself forward, but I still have that mentality of like I don't want to be too much or anything. And the team meetings point was something that I didn't even think about, because I'm always a bit like we go around in our team meetings and we share everything that we're each doing. And because I don't want to take up too much time
Mm,
from other people, and because I don't want to sound like I'm being overbearing, I always say what I'm doing, but I like brush over it as if it's like, it's whatever, it's not really that big a deal. Like it's yeah. And I don't do
mm,
it in the same way that other people are doing it, especially like the people who are either higher up in the organization, or the white men in the organization who are like, this is what's happening, this is why it's great, this is what's going on in the future, that
mm.
kind of thing. And it's just like a different mentality that I haven't adopted, that I think I will
Yeah.
definitely start trying, because I see the benefit of it
It's
when you
because we've
talk
been
about
raised
it.
to be humble.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been raised to be
Very
humble. We need
true.
to unlearn that. And don't get me wrong, I don't think any of us should go out being arrogant, but there's something in the middle of humble and arrogant, right? And it's
Hmm.
just speaking truth, and just being confident in speaking about the things that you've done, and the things that you have done that are great. And I just don't think that we are taught enough to celebrate just what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely something that we can learn from some of our colleagues and our peers.
On the humble point, do you think that it also translates to speaking out against any disrespect that you receive? So there have been times where either my friends will be telling me about, instances that they've had in their life, whether it's just, going to the supermarket or walking around, or if it's at work or if it's at school or something. And I've had these experiences too, where you feel like something was a bit disrespectful, and it might be, race targeted, but you're not really quite sure. Like it might be, but you don't want to be accused of using the race card. You know what I mean? And just like, oh, it's another black person just
Mm,
using the race card again. Because once again, I'm still in that mindset of representing. I don't want to
mm,
be the black woman who's all about race and who's always just accusing everyone.
yeah.
But I still want to be able to have the
Mm.
uncomfortable conversations. So how do you go about doing that?
So my recommendation is always pick your battles.
Hmm.
So, I believe that it's really important for us as individuals to protect our mental health, right?
Yeah.
Above everything else. So if you're in a space where having a conversation, so if you have been disrespected in a really covert way and you're unsure, ask yourself, like, is there value in me having this conversation right now? And if there
Mm,
isn't value, leave it, because your mental health is so much more important. If, however, it's done in a really overt way, I think it's always really important to turn it back on the person. So ask them questions, hold them accountable. So questions like, particularly in the workplace, if you're experiencing microaggressions, or you've experienced something that feels like it's race related, asking questions like, I'm not sure if I've understood. Please, could you repeat that?
mm,
I'm really sorry. The tone of your email, or the tone of the way that you're speaking to me, kind of implies that you're upset. Have I done something to offend you? And asking those things, because what it makes people do is it makes people take a moment to think and to look back at themselves. And sometimes, if they're doing it by accident and they're not meant to come across that way, then they're able to self-regulate and say, oh, actually, no, you haven't. I'm sorry if I've come across that way. Or alternatively, to say what's on their mind, and then you can have a deeper conversation about it. But I
mm,
always encourage people, don't make assumptions, because even if your assumption is correct, if you haven't got evidence to back that up, you can end up being or looking like the one with the
yeah.
issue. So really just following any instances of microaggressions or racism with a question to the person that's offended, and just seeing how they respond. Most of the time when you ask people a question and you put it back on them, they will either, apologize because they didn't mean to do it, or they will backtrack.
Hmm.
It's highly unlikely that people will directly say, yeah, I've got an issue with you because of this,
Yeah.
this, and this, particularly if you've not done anything specifically to wrong them other than just be, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I think my biggest advice in that is protect your mental health and choose your battles. If it's worthy of a conversation, make it a questioning conversation rather than you accusing the person. And if it's not worthy of a conversation, go about your day. Go
Yeah, be
about
at
your
peace.
day.
Yeah, I think that's what I usually do, because I feel like there's been times where, I've had like a microaggression. Thankfully, I mean, I haven't had to deal with that in a long time. But in the times that I have, I've always sat and pondered on it. I'm just like, is this really worth it? Is it really worth,
Mm,
addressing this right now? Or maybe would I be more at peace if I dealt with it or if I didn't deal with it? And I think most times I've been more at peace if I've just kind of like let it be, like let them do what they want to do and be how they want
mm.
to be and have it be a problem for them. And then I'm okay in and within
Mm.
myself.
I think it's also really important, like I, growing up, I had a massive savior complex. I was Lady
Mm.
Justice. So if anyone in my circle was being bullied or was wrong, I was the savior that came in and saved the day for everyone. And it would always end up with everyone, like, the person who I saved being absolutely fine, and then
Yeah.
me either being really upset or angry or being in trouble at school. So I had to learn really, really quickly that I don't need to save everybody. Which sounds
Yeah.
really funny considering the work that I do. But one of the things that I talk about is that, I'm a diversity and inclusion consultant during the day, like for my work, Monday to Friday. But on the
Mhm.
weekend, it is not my job to educate people about racism. So
Mm.
if I am with someone who is doing something wrong, I'm not going to educate you about racism. I might challenge your behavior. I might ask you if there's something you'd like to discuss, or if I've done something to offend you. But I'm not going to take it upon myself to fight this battle about educating people about race on the weekend, because my mental health is really important to me and I need to have
Yeah.
some time where I can shut off from it all. But I think that particularly as women, we need to be mindful of our personal safety,
Mhm.
and there are still people in this world that don't have an issue with physically attacking people. So I think it's always just also important to be mindful of your surroundings. So if you do experience microaggressions or overt racism, just being mindful of, where am I? Am I safe to challenge this here? And if you're not, prioritize your safety.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And I've done that so many different times where it's, you'd be walking around. It's always when I'm walking around as well. I never really feel like super unsafe in the rooms that I go into, but sometimes you just be walking anywhere and you can
Mm,
feel the eyes on you. You know, when you walk around, people look at you and stuff, but there's always a different feeling. Like you'll look at somebody
yeah,
and they'll look at you and it might be fine. But then when you're walking
yeah.
around and you can feel like an unsafe undertone to everything,
Mm,
I'm always very like hyper aware. And I think those are the times where being aware of my blackness is actually beneficial because
mm,
there's, yeah, the cloak that you wear of, all of these harmful things that we need to unlearn. But at the same time, it can be really helpful in just prioritizing your own safety and your own protection and that kind of thing. And then when it
no,
comes to like
absolutely.
being the savior and being like a champion for justice and inclusion and everything. That has definitely been me. I have been that person for so long. I think it's only within, you know, late last year and probably into now that I've kind of taken a step back and decided, you know what, I'm going to exhaust myself if I just
Mm,
speak out on every single issue. And I think with our generation, you feel so much pressure to do that because we're coming up in a generation of youth advocates and people who are really like, there's so many people in our generation who are really championing inclusion and
mm,
social and climate justice, all these different things. And it's amazing and it's great. But then you feel like a pressure to do that all the time, and then
mm.
it's kind of a balancing act of your own mental health and your own peace and everything. So do you think that with the younger generation that they have been bigger champions of inclusion, but do you think there's still some problems that might exist, whether it's things that they need to unlearn or things that they're not doing correctly?
I think they've definitely been champions of inclusion. I know, speaking as I'm a millennial, and I know that organizations are scared of Gen Z, right?
Really?
They are frightened of Gen Z, and they're frightened of Gen Z because Gen Z say it as it is. And one of the things,
Yeah.
I talk a lot about, for me, I know that I stand on the shoulders of giants. There are people that came before me that have made it possible for me to have the life that I live today. But
Yeah.
I'm also calling on my generation to be the giants for Gen Z, for Gen Alpha, etc. And, I think that a lot of the freedoms that Gen Z have is because millennials came and caused a bit of trouble. Not
Oh,
enough trouble,
absolutely.
but we caused a bit of trouble and created a little window that has allowed Gen Z to come in and be, bold, be courageous, be outspoken, and be no nonsense.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone yesterday and I said, I was talking about how important it is for organizations to continue to prioritize diversity, equality, and inclusion because Gen Z rate that as one of the top three things they look for in an organization, right? And
Hmm.
Gen Z do not pet to stay at home if they don't feel like going to work. If they're not happy at work, they're taking a well-being day. They might take
Yeah.
a well-being week, right? Whereas
Yeah.
millennials, we couldn't do that. We would lose our jobs. But in today's day and age, because of things like the COVID-19 lockdown, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, etc., organizations are so aware and mindful now about health and well-being that they
Yeah.
won't challenge you taking a mental health day as Gen Z is. So I love what I'm seeing in this generation. I'm even more scared for the world once my daughter's generation gets into the world of work because they will be taking no prisoners. But I think one of the things, like, I've got twin cousins that are both 22, and
Mm.
watching them grow up has been amazing because they are no nonsense people and they're a boy and a girl. And it's also so interesting to see the difference in dynamics because the
Yeah.
boy is really quiet. My baby Timmy, he's like really quiet, quite serious, but also loads of fun. And then his sister
Mhm.
Kerry is like no nonsense. And it's funny because she is tiny, she is small but mighty, and that
Yeah.
that woman, I was going to call her a little girl, that woman is really, really powerful. And one of the things that she won't do is she's very much, a savior as well. So if she sees injustice, she'll speak up on it, irrespective of her size. My only, and I love that about Gen Z. I love that about Kerry. My only thing is, I think that you should not just prioritize your mental health in the workplace, but also prioritize it in your downtime as well, because
Mm.
there is so much going on in this world and so much that has been going on for a long, long time. And there's only so much that you can do. I think you should continue to use your voice. You should continue to stand up against things, but you should also be really mindful of how you're feeling and
Mhm.
just being aware of that. That sense of self is really important. If you need to take downtime and you need to step away from an issue for a while to preserve your mental health, I think it's really important to do that, because the world needs you to continue the amazing stuff you're doing, but you also need to make sure that you're filling your cup so that you're able to come back and continue that work in a powerful way without it being a detriment to your mental and physical health.
Oh my gosh. I felt that personally, and I feel like, oh, I hope everyone heard that, and I hope that you like play it back and just play it every single day so that that is ingrained in your mind, because that is something that I think Gen Z, and hopefully not the next generation, hopefully Gen Z will have figured it out, and then the next generation will be at peace and calm and like they can do what they need to do. But I think Gen Z really, really
That would
needs
be
to hear that.
amazing.
Yeah, it would be so great if, like you said, millennials and the people, the generations before you, have paved the way so incredibly for our generation to come and be able to do the things that we can do right now, to even have the courage to do the things that we're
Mm,
doing, to step into the spaces that we step into. That would have never existed if it wasn't for the generations before us. And it would be amazing if we could
absolutely.
like figure out the balance between being a champion for change and inclusion and diversity, but also truly prioritizing mental health in a holistic way in all areas of our life, because that's
Mm,
not something that we do. We have like grind and hustle culture all the time. We have,
yeah.
that you have to be consciously aware of every single issue that's going on all of the time and speaking out against it, because if, you know, it's like this mentality of, if I don't speak out against it, then nobody else will. And if I don't speak out against it, then
Yeah.
I might be perceived as like, another part of the problem. There's this quote that
Mm,
goes around that I see whenever there's an issue that's popped up, which is and there's some truth to it as well, but I see some problems in it when I hear what you said. It says something along the lines of, if you are silent, then you're part of the problem. And I get it.
yeah.
Like, I do understand it. But at the same time, for my own well being, I can't speak on every single, I can't, be championing
Mm.
and marching for every single cause, because it's just too exhausting.
So that phrase, I use it a lot, right? And I use it a
Mm-hmm.
lot in reference to allies. And that's where I
Mm.
think it's relevant. So if you are in a position of power and you see injustice and
Mm-hmm.
you choose to say nothing,
Mm-hmm.
then your silence is saying something.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I, as an older woman, witness a younger woman being attacked by her partner in the street, and I say nothing, I am
Mm-hmm.
part of that problem. So that is something that I am obliged to get involved in and to stop, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Similarly, if we are in the UK and we're seeing race riots, we're seeing black and brown people being attacked in the streets by people that look like me. I'm a white person, I'm role
Mm-hmm.
playing, right?
Yeah.
If as a white person I am seeing that happening and I'm saying nothing, I'm part of the problem. It's
Mm.
things like that relates to, as far as I'm concerned. I think as black people, if we're seeing the race riots happen, for example, and we choose not to speak up, the reason we're not speaking up isn't because, we are able to change what's happening. It isn't because we've got some power that we're withholding. It's purely because we're in pain and there is nothing we can do to fix this
Yeah.
situation. And we need other people to step up and do something about that. So I think it's just always important for us to think about things in context. I firmly believe in that phrase, if you say nothing, you're saying something. I firmly
Mm-hmm.
believe in that. But I think it's important that we use that in context. It's not to say that every single issue is for you to speak on, because there are some things that actually, if you're not educated enough on an issue, you have no business speaking on it.
Oh,
However, if
absolutely.
you're seeing things happen that are obviously wrong and
Mhm.
you have some power to influence it, then there is a responsibility for you to speak up. But, just talking about every single issue for the sake of talking about it when you have no position of power to change it, just in some spaces it's a bit ridiculous. Like,
Yeah. No, I
you know
totally
it's like
agree.
for Donald Trump to get, Donald Trump's inauguration, for me to put a post up saying, don't do it, this is wrong, blah blah
Don't do
blah,
it.
don't put his hand on the Bible, don't swear him in. No one's listening. What's the
Yeah.
point? No one's
No, that's
listening, right?
oh, I so
um
agree with that.
yeah, so you just need to be mindful, like, pick your battles.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely agree because my a lot of my a few years ago, my entire identity online was like the advocate, the activist who speaks
mm,
out on everything. And I've
mm,
taken a step back from all of that. And for multiple reasons, because my life's changed, but also because primarily mental health like is too exhausting to just be in everything. And
mm,
there's times where people, because that's my identity, people send me videos online and be like, "Oh, what are your thoughts on this? Like, what is your
mm.
opinion on this? Are you going to speak out on this?" And I'll like, I'll give my opinion in the direct messages because they clearly want to have a conversation with me, and that's fine. But
Mm,
there's been times where people don't see me posting about, for example, I think I did what, like one post about Trump recently where it was just like, responding to something that he said because it actually like struck me. And I was like, I cannot
mm,
be silent about this. This is, something that need to understand and know. But I cannot be looking at every single video and every single
yeah,
thing that like, Trump and Elon Musk and all these different things are going on. I just can't. And there's no point.
same. I in my, not in my culture, but in Caribbean culture, you might, I don't know if you say it in Barbados, but my Jamaican friends used to say when we were growing up that if you don't hear, you have to feel.
Yeah, yeah, we do
And
say that.
it's very much this, yeah, so it's very much, we're at a point now where we were talking a lot before the election about why people shouldn't be voting for Trump, and now he's in, and we're at the point now where you didn't listen, and
Oh,
now you're experiencing the pain that we were talking about and trying to prevent. So you
yeah.
have to feel for a minute, don't you?
Yeah.
But also, I feel like we're at a point now where I did one post about Trump, I think, before the election, and then I don't know if I've posted about him since, because I'm not going
Same.
to have someone whose values don't align with mine taking up my feed. I'm not going to give you that platform. Like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I'm not famous, and I get that he's
No,
not,
but I'm the
I'm not
same.
making him any money, and I'm not affecting his wallet, but I'm
Mhm.
also, yeah, I'm not going to fill my feed with you. I'm not doing
Mhm.
that. And there are some things that I won't comment on. There was a recent issue, I think, with a guy that used to host MasterChef or something, and
Mm.
he was being called out for being misogynistic and things like that. And there were so many people talking about it. And it's like, okay, there's enough people talking about this. This isn't something I need to feed
Yes.
into.
Yeah.
Um, you know, yeah, it's not everything that I need to talk on. And I actually thought someone might challenge me on that and say, why aren't you talking about this? But we've been
Mhm.
talking about misogyny and
For years.
gender inequity for years. There's always
Mhm.
been space for that. But how many times are you talking about misogynoir? Because that's what I'm going to talk about. My
Yeah.
platform is about progressing things that are still way too far behind. So
Yeah.
if I see instances of misogynoir where we see an intersection of gender and race, I will talk about it. But
Yeah.
if it's gender related, I don't agree with what's happening. But I don't think I need to speak about it because there's plenty of people talking about it. So we've got enough attention on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with every single thing that you said. That and I feel so seen as well because I feel like I've had these opinions in my head and I always thought they were controversial, but it's like I'm relating now with somebody else who has the same opinions. So it's very validating.
Yeah, it's hard as well because I think we worry a lot about other people's expectations of us. But
Yeah.
when people are attacking, like, I'm really big on delivering my message with love. So,
Mm,
all of my posts on LinkedIn, I'm very mindful of how I say things because I know that if people deliver something to me in a certain way, if I don't like how it's being delivered, I won't take it in. And I
yeah.
really want my message to land. So, I lead with love in my messaging. But I've still had people, not like what I said and come on LinkedIn and like said nasty things in the comments or told me to go back to my country, etc. So I'm not going to have other people telling me what I should be talking about because when I'm in my house upset and hurting from what someone has said, you're not there to comfort me and you're not coming to
Absolutely.
save me. So you're not going to tell me to put my life on the line for anything.
Oh yeah. I feel like I'm gonna hold that near and dear to my heart because I absolutely agree. And your LinkedIn posts are amazing because I found you on LinkedIn, and I think it was the resume
Thank
post that you
you.
posted about like I can't remember what it was, but it was like a CV, and you had put like all these relatable things that Black people have to deal with in the workplace. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I just went down a rabbit hole of stalking
Yeah,
you a little bit, and then I was like, yeah, I need to have her on the podcast. This is great. And so I'm really happy that you were able to
I
come
love that.
on.
I'm always here for positive stalking.
Yeah. I do that all the time, all the time. So thank you so much, Grace. This has been absolutely incredible. I am going to give the floor over to you if you have any other last words for our audience before we sign off.
I think my only last words is don't feel the need to get it right the first time, as long as you just keep going. And I don't know who's listening to this, but you are amazing, you are loved, and you are perfect just the way you are. So just keep doing you and just keep showing love. That's it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Grace. This has been absolutely incredible. And I will link everything relating to Grace in the show notes, all of her stuff, everything, including her LinkedIn, her consulting page, anything else. And it's been just such a pleasure talking to you. So once again, thank you so much for coming on to the
Thank you
podcast.
so much for having me. I really, really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm so
Good luck with
glad.
everything. This podcast is
Oh.
definitely needed.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I really appreciate that. And if you guys did enjoy the Notes and Quotes podcast, you can go check us out on all of our socials. So we are on Instagram, LinkedIn as well, TikTok, and YouTube. Video is exclusively on YouTube. So if you want to watch the video version, or if you're already watching the video version, it would be on YouTube of this episode. And if you want more of me, you can check me out on Instagram at Naomi A. Cambridge. And that is all I have to share with you guys today. And that is all we have from Grace as well. And I hope you enjoyed. And I will see you again next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.